Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Construction Record Podcast. It is our Halloween edition. I know our listeners and readers have been waiting to listen to this. Don't you think, Lindsey?
Absolutely. They've been waiting since last year and can't hold their breath long enough.
Yeah, so before we dive in, why don't we actually do the introductions? Because it's been a while since we've been doing specials here on the podcast since we put it on a short hiatus. This is Vince Versace, Director of News Media at ConstructConnect, and I'm joined by.
By Lindsey Cole, editor of the DCN and JOC at ConstructConnect.
So, Lindsey, we're in full-on Halloween mode. The good thing is both you and I are the type of people that are Halloween crazy and like anything that's spooky and scary, would you say?
100%. We like a good thrill, that's for
Oh,
sure. As
yeah,
your front yard and my front yard would attest to during Halloween.
totally. Yes, my front yard is, and then your front yard is one of those yards where it's an escape from reality and it's into everything spooky and fun. And something we've always had here that was spooky and fun, tradition that's been ongoing now for, geez, at least 18 years, because I was the one who started it long
Yep.
ago. And this is not about me, but when I was a staff writer at the DCN, when I started, I decided to write a haunted construction story just to do something, bring a bit more of that community newspaper feel to B2B construction writing.
Well, doesn't that just show you how much there is to do with construction? Literally everything can be drawn back to construction. So,
Exactly. As I always said, with always those new staff hire training orientations, from the moment you wake up in the morning and, you know what I mean, swing your feet out of bed and reach for that, you know what I mean, light. There you go. Construction's impacted you already. All right. And I think you may remember that horrible orientation I put you through. But
I absolutely do. That was a fright in and of itself. Haha,
yes,
sorry,
there.
I had to.
Ah, nicely done. Nicely done. But but the fun thing was when I did that first story, it was about, the Winchester House in
hmm
California, the
hmm
haunted Winchester House that got built over decades, and with all these kind of crazy staircases and walls and stairs that don't go anywhere. And, the Winchester Mansion has its history. You've seen it in documentaries and scary stories around this time of year on video, or on television. And the neat thing was talking to the construction manager, the guy who's in charge of the maintenance of that piece. So little did I know, starting doing that story a year ago, talking to the master carpenter who's in charge of keeping that house up, that we would turn into every year trying to share something that is haunted and construction related, which was an assignment that got passed on to you at some point as well.
It did indeed. Yeah, absolutely. It's been fun over the years and it's continued to keep going. And now I think we have an interesting twist for this year.
Yeah.
So,
Strangely enough, that's the thing. We've done, scary movies that are related to construction, scary comics, myths, legends, ghost towns,
hmm
we've covered the gamut, but we never wrote about something that is near and dear to our heart, our love of words as
Yes.
writers and as
hmm
journalists, right? So this year we pulled together, I'll give it for our audience, The
Dun, dun,
Sinister Seven,
dun.
a haunted construction books guide. And books is spelled with a capital B, capital O hyphen KS, because the word boo is in
Yes. He,
it.
he's cheeky like that, everyone.
Yeah. But that's what we did. So for our listeners, we kind of tried to hunt around for books that were related to construction or had construction or some element of construction at its core, even though it was a thriller or a horror,
Mhm.
right? And some things got eliminated. I found when I started doing the research. There's the classic, like the Amityville horror.
Yep.
That's a haunted house, right? It's a house, but is it really about construction and the building of it, or is that loosely uh, tied to the horror somehow, our industry? And we kind of dove in and we did a bit of research, looking at Reddit's, to see other people who have ever asked this question. What's the best haunted construction book out there, or haunted book or haunted story that's related to construction? There's a lot of other blogs and industry blogs and B2Bs that actually did sort of this list that we did. So, in
hmm
fairness to them as well, we kind of surveyed them to see which were the ones that showed up the most via the Reddit thread, via looking at some other lists, and also just some friend recommendations as well.
Well, that's always the best way to get things is word of mouth, I find anyway as well. So it's kind of interesting to see. how the
Mm,
list kind of culminated into what we've got for the Sinister Seven. So,
yes. So for folks, the Sinister Seven, the list will be in the podcast notes. You'll be able to see images of the front page covers and some short write-ups of the seven books. But the seven that we have, I'll just run them off first as titles and their authors, and maybe we'll just dive in a little bit into what we liked or what we think looks like could be a good read, or if there's anything that we've actually read. Sound good?
sound good?
So one of the first ones is Construction Site Gets a Fright by Sherry Dusky Rinker and AJ Ford. Lindsey, you know the construction site books,
I
right?
absolutely do. This should be on everyone's list who has little ghouls and goblins
Mm-hmm.
because it certainly, I think, fits the bill as a fantastic Halloween construction book.
Yeah,
So,
for those of you that aren't familiar with it, there was a book we actually wrote about and talked about a long time ago. Good Night Construction Site, which
mhm.
is a cartoon book, I guess you'd say, an illustrated book for
Yes.
kids, and
Yep.
that one was about the construction site going to sleep. Now this one, they actually wrote a version that happens on Halloween and what happens at the site as the machines get ready for bedtime. However, the trick or treating on their minds, the construction site becomes scarier even for the toughest of heavy equipment.
But I think at the end of the day, it's very scary, but they're able to go and have fun. And
Yep,
being with their friends is the key element, which is what Halloween's all about. So,
exactly. And I like this book. This is one of the two that I have read on our list, and it's basically the tagline, the message from the authors is laughing with friends is the best way to turn fright into fun.
mhm.
And so it's kind of neat how they present how all these big, bad, tough, heavy machinery on the construction site starts to get a little spooked and scary on Halloween. Then after that, we got other books. There's The Grip of It. I haven't read it by Jacques Jam. What's that one? That one's the one about a young married couple with tension in their marriage move to a fixer-upper in the woods.
Because that's going to help the marriage. That is clearly going to help the marriage
Oh,
when you decide to go and move into the woods and do a fixing up DIY project. Amazing.
yeah,
Great.
because what could really go wrong on that premise, right? But this book though did show up on three different lists, especially when I dug around. So what was it? There was litreactor.com.
Hmm.
This is what they said about the book. The descriptions of decorating and renovation mixed in with a couple being tormented by some outside entity makes for an engaging read. But to our
Yeah.
first point, yeah, I think there will be a lot of relatability for folks that have ever tackled a construction project around the house. So curious to see how that one goes. One of the other ones is called The Handyman Method by Nick Cutter and Andrew F. Sullivan. This one's neat. This is one of the two that I want to read that I haven't read on this list. And this one was like, what happens when a mysterious online DIY instructor delivers dark subliminal messages about handling problems around the house? What could really go wrong with that, Lindsay? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine. I feel like everything would be smooth sailing, but
Yeah, because
I guess not.
as one of the book reviewers said, cracks begin to emerge in both their new residents and their lives
Ah,
as they try
yes.
to deal with this new home that they moved into. So definitely, it's been a highly recommended read. That one actually had some of the longest um, responses from
Mm,
readers that I found. People that really kind of really dug it. So maybe it has to do with also as well the times that we live in, right? People go to YouTube for videos, on how to learn how to do things, especially like for quick home repair, you know?
yeah, and that can be very much hit and miss and can go, well, that can be frightening in and of itself, some of the stuff that you see on there for the DIYers, but I digress.
I digress, yeah. So there was probably a level of relatability there for people, and that's why
Yeah.
they gravitated to it, and it just showed up everywhere when we did our research. Next book is one called House of Leaves. I've read this book. I read it when I was younger. Fair warning to anybody, like it's a deep, strange read. So it's cool because it's basically about a family that discovers that they're living in a house that's bigger on the inside versus the outside, and they start to explore that. But it's not really exploring about the structural parts of the house. It's more about the structure of life. So there's a lot of metaphors in that. But it's kind of neat how they kind of bounce back and forth. But the book is not a linear read. Like I was telling you, Lindsay, it's like you don't read it from
Mm.
front to back.
Yeah, which is just interesting in and of itself. Like it's
Yeah,
physically different to
it,
read.
it exactly. Like at times you got to flip it upside down to read it. At times you're really encouraged to follow through on the footnotes and the amendments that show up to read it. So not so much it's spooky enough, it's a thriller, but it's more like a psychological
Mm.
exercise to read that book. But it did make our list. And not just because I read it, but it did show up on a few of the other lists we looked at and on a Reddit feed that I found. Next one next door is The House Next Door by Anne Rivers Siddons. This one's it'd be interesting. You know, a couple living in a peaceful Atlanta suburb are surprised to see construction starting on the vacant lot next to them. And then the couple soon realize, dun dun dun, that more is wrong than their diminished privacy. As one reviewer wrote.
Hmm.
So, highly recommend that as well. And then we have The Invited as well, makes this list. Another DIY project. It's funny how DIY shows up a lot in
Yeah.
some of these.
And a married couple as well.
Once again, exactly. So there are themes, modern themes here,
Yes.
I
Yes,
think,
sir. Yeah. Hmm.
that are being explored in these books. And The Invited is, as I wrote in the story, big DIY project means big paranormal problems
Hmm.
for a married couple. One of the reviewers from Lit Reactor wrote, "If you enjoy watching HGTV house building shows, do not miss this. Should be interesting to see. You know what I mean? Know what that means?
I had heard of this book. I've never read it, but I have heard of it before. So it's obviously fairly notable in terms of its popularity because it's been in my circles as something
Hmm.
I should check out. So I suppose that's
I know.
now I really have to. But
And I think we noticed you and I were having that conversation. We realized there was a movie made about it as well, one that
yes, I
neither of
believe
us have
so.
seen.
Yeah.
There was a film as well. Probably the one I want to read the most is the last one on the list, number 7 here, The Restoration by
Mm.
J.H. Moncrief. And basically, here, a woman is hired to take on a year-long restoration of a crumbling old manor. She has such high hopes for the project and its success that she moves into the manor with her daughter. And like, and I can attest to this physically in real time, and you can too, because you've had home rentals done well. You never know when you open up old walls what's going to come out, right?
Mm.
And that's the adage here because it opens up old wounds, old spiritual wounds in that house as she starts to tackle the work. And what was it? One reviewer wrote, "Fans of this old house and Bob Vila will love this blend of home restoration and all the classic haunted house tropes."
I did
Huh.
like this old house. I did like watching that. So
Did you? I've never
yes.
watched that. So,
Hmm.
but that's kind of like the recommended lists of books that are related to construction that obviously are horrors or thrillers. Definitely. Which one in the end would you want to read? Is it that? Is it The Invited? What kind of
Yeah, I
piques
think
your
The Invited,
interest?
and I think, as you said, The Restoration. I think both of those have some interesting elements to it. I'm always interested in the kind of paranormal side of things and what can you know whether I'm skeptical on one hand and then on the other hand I'm not. So it's interesting to read books that include that and see what's if they go push the envelope too far or if they
Mm,
make it kind of realistic enough that you could say, huh, maybe this could happen. So those two I think seem to be the most um and the one and the House of Leaves that you pointed out, I think that that's got a really, as much as it's going to be weird to read, I have read
mhm.
some ones that have also been, like literally where you have to turn the page upside down and stuff. I think that that could be interesting, maybe frustrating at times, but if the outcome's worth it, that might be cool. So, um, yeah, I think those would be the ones that I would mainly like to check out.
Yeah. So, if to our listeners who are catching this on Halloween, yeah, if there's a book that you want to suggest, just email us at editor@dailycommercialnews.com or put it in your replies to the review of this podcast on wherever your podcatcher is. You know what I mean? If you want to take time to leave a comment there or email us, yeah, let us know. We definitely wouldn't mind adding an addendum to this if there's more books. Like you and I were talking, there are
There are
other books that come to
tons.
mind. You have one, right?
Yeah, I have an honorable mention because I don't think you can talk about thrillers or horror movies without mentioning Stephen King. So, because he's the king of that genre, no pun intended. But back in the early 80s when he was actually writing under the pseudonym Richard Bachman, he released a book, a paperback called Roadwork, which obviously has a construction element to it. Full disclosure, I haven't read the book, but I might give it a go because it looks kind of interesting. In essence, the plot is a man's grieving over the death of his son and the disintegration of his marriage. And he's driven into mental instability when he learns that both his home and his workplace will be demolished to make way for a highway. So
Hmm.
to me, you know, kind of has harkenings to almost a Shining-esque in the sense that, somebody losing their mind when over something, but also could be obviously very tied to construction. And you know maybe he's a really angry NIMBY, as some developers might have encountered at a council meeting or something, or maybe he's valid and he doesn't want his house demolished or the highway built in that place. But either way, I thought we would have to mention Stephen King because he is the king of horror. So.
Oh, I totally agree. You and I are fans. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I remember us doing construction stories about the building of the haunted house out in Durham Way,
Yes,
right?
yeah, in Oshawa, yes, that was one of the ones that I believe I tackled.
Yeah.
Um, for the Stephen King movie It, which was shot um, in a place, well, majority shot in a place near and dear to Vince's heart in Port
Mm.
Hope.
Yep.
But the house, the haunted house that's in the movie, was built and constructed on a very small street randomly in Oshawa. I guess that was a location they could maybe get approvals for and go with. So I went down that street and took pictures of it in its various pieces, which, I have to say kudos to those constructors and the builders and the stagehands and everything because it is a work of art. It was spooky even just being there, and it's not real, it's a set. So
Oh.
it was very cool to see the effort that goes into it. And these things are put up, put down, oftentimes reconstructed again. So next time, or if you are going to check out the movie It, the new It, not the miniseries back in the 90s, which by the way is absolutely terrifying, check out that house because there was a lot that went into making it. So it's pretty cool. And now they're doing a series called Welcome to Derry that's out, I believe now. So Derry's the town where the horror antics happen with the infamous clown Pennywise. So
Pennywise, yes. That's
ugh.
the neat stuff that we've been able to dabble. I mean, that's the neat stuff and being vague, but like the construction of these sets, the
Hmm.
building of these, like, I mean, worlds. It's something we've happily dove into over the last few years as we've done these construction related stories. Comes to mind is Peter Kenter. Our
Hmm.
readers that are
Of course.
familiar with one of our longtime correspondents, who's tackled a lot of the construction, haunted construction stories for us, did this great piece. You may recall because we were both, you and I, and quite a few people were quite the fans of the Living Dead show and
The Walking Dead.
The Walking Dead. Sorry, I'm thinking about the Living Dead. Sorry,
Geez,
Jesse,
it's going all
Jesse
over into
Romero.
the horror.
Yeah, do not go down the rabbit hole just yet, and show how much of a geek I am. But I mean, and we did a piece where Peter talked to, the union and the carpenters there and building those sets and building that world, that zombie world, and making it so, I mean, believable. And once again, it speaks to the craftsmanship in this industry, right? The ability that we're back to that thing that I've said is like construction touches you in so many different ways, and for all this, green screen and AI and everything that we see in the movies that help us escape, that building element is still there in them.
100%.
You
Yeah.
know, what I mean, it's kind of neat to celebrate the industry that way, But I know the industry's not celebrating completely right now as we try to segue. It's not going to be all about books and reviews for our longtime listeners. There's plenty of things that go bump in the night and scare this industry
Mhm.
as far as issues and topics. And I thought, you know what? We're here together. Well, why don't we go over some of the stuff that, let's say you think you can start us off, that you think is keeping builder, constructors, contractors, GCs, architects, everybody, all the way down to the guys on the tools, keeping them up at night right now.
Well, I don't think it comes as any shock, but it's certainly quite a fright. Is the constant uncertainty regarding tariffs, whether you're impacted because of construction costs or, the steel and aluminum companies and businesses and materials that are impacted by that, lumber. All of those things are an absolutely terrifying thought as it is right now, and it continues to change. And it honestly, some days it's rosier. You think a deal is going to be reached between Canada and the US with Trump and Carney. And then on the other side of the spectrum, things get pulled out from under you very quickly. So I think for the construction industry right now, it's waiting with bated breath to see literally each day, what is going to happen with that. You know, we have had some good news, like even just as we record this podcast, we had some good news about construction starting on a mega project in Ontario. It's the St. Thomas Gigafactory plant. They're celebrating using Canadian companies and, getting that construction underway, which is fantastic. And that is a ray of light, but there is still a lot of uncertainty and a lot of darkness, and it continues. We're even seeing it with, the statistics that are coming out, events from a variety of associations.
Yeah. Just yesterday, the British Columbia Construction Association, BCCA, released their fall stat pack, and it really looked at inflationary pressures on the industry in British Columbia and how the high costs are impacting everybody throughout the everybody throughout the construction chain. It is bringing uncertainty. I mean, the increased costs, like how are we going to like supply these projects, let alone get them built, and how do you do it? I don't think it's a joke when we say that it's potentially keeping people up at night in this industry, because we see it as consumers with our bills, whether it's our grocery bill or trying to get stuff, you know what I mean, for birthday parties or just general living, especially if you got kids, and then you look at what the industry has to deal with and those pressures and those costs, material costs, whether north or south of the border, is something that's impacting the industry because it's all uncertain, and construction, like you and I have known over the years, has a level of, okay, fix it on the fly because
Sure.
surprise happen in every well-planned project. But this type of cost from the outset causing a bit of reluctance and taking a second breath on whether people should even bid projects,
Yeah.
let alone how they execute on the project that they're on, that the prices are changing midstream, is something that is, I mean, in this context, horrific for some companies in the industry, right? And we know that there's issues that are pressing that need construction at the core of it. And one of them is the housing crisis, whether it's in Canada or the US, right? We've seen it. And just recently, we also saw a coalition on the east side here in Ontario kind of get engaged in that, correct, Lindsay?
Absolutely. Yeah. A number of associations kind of banded together to reiterate, I think, what has been a common message from all of them, which is that, it's, to quote them, it's fixing the housing emergency. They're calling it an emergency in this country because in Ontario, this article referenced Ontario specifically, but it's, Toronto Real Estate Board, ResCon, Build. You have a number of them, and that's just a few of them that are listed in this story that's on our website. But they're trying to gather together and join forces to basically say to the government, both Ontario and federal, you're not going to meet your housing targets that you've set. It's just not with the current climate that it is in construction. There needs to be leeway and more streamlining of approvals, easing up of taxes can only help the residential construction sector, excuse me. We've seen countless articles, Vince, over the past for quite a few years, but now like more than ever, obviously, where you're seeing the condo market in Toronto flounder. Um, I think if you're a big developer, you're really struggling to plan ahead. As Vince said, obviously things come up in construction and there's things you can't plan for, but there is a certain element of certainty that the industry needs and wants when it comes to building these massive buildings to help support those who need housing. So they've had to pivot. There's different things, purpose-built rentals coming up more and more. But either way, the fact remains across the board. There's serious struggles when it comes to um, approval processes,
Mhm.
development fees, and even the cost. There's been some just news broke very recently that there's been some leeway on the provincial front with the waiving of the HST for new home buyers. So that was an ask of a lot of these associations. So there is movement, but I still think there's lots that go bump in the night that has not been addressed.
It's true, and it's what was interesting about this coalition as we wrap up that point is it wasn't just truly all just construction associations and groups.
Hmm.
I have to remind myself it's like Habitat for Humanity's in that.
Yes,
For those of you familiar with the organization, they're in the middle of all that. And the Toronto Region Board of Trade, of course. You know what I mean? Because it is about that. It is about the business of the region, and they have a voice in that. Curious to see because we do have our upcoming federal budget coming out
we do.
November 4th,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see how the feds, if they have anything in there. We have talked, as you mentioned, the HST rebate. That's a governmental initiative. Curious to see if there's any other type of dollars or processes that are going to get introduced to kind of help the industry tackle the housing emergency as many of us see it across this country.
It's interesting. There's been hints and movements towards obviously Carney's housing plan that he has, and I think the emphasis on modular and prefabricated design is interesting. We've done multiple articles on that in terms of the and benefits and pros and cons, I guess, if you will, of
Mm,
that avenue. But it is something that is being mentioned more and more on the federal side, even provincially. But like, so we'll have to see where that goes and how many companies, embrace that fully.
mhm.
But the federal budget's going to have a lot of other things in it as well that are, hopefully going to be good news for the industry, but also probably more questions will surface too.
And I found with that coalition, one of the statements they made was they indicate that they recognize potential disruptions impacting the housing ecosystem that are outside of the direct control of governments.
Hmm.
So they understand that things like trade wars, geopolitical tensions, economic uncertainty need to be considered as this is to quote, as we navigate an uncertain environment at the macro level. So they are talking, they get it. At a macro level, there are things that just can't be done. But he sounded like the old guy, been here 19 years. And the stuff around red tape and building in Ontario, I can speak authoritatively on that. 19 years, we've written about it so many different ways and times. And your time when you came on, it's been 11 years, same thing, right? There are certain things on the red tape side and the zoning side that maybe need to be considered if we want to address housing, right? I'm not going to give an opinion here beyond that. Like, I still believe that you need environmental controls. You need to be smart about how you do it,
Of
right? But
course.
at the same time, there is a legit concern here. Houses just don't get built fast enough here in Ontario and in Canada, really,
No,
right?
absolutely not.
Hmm.
No, it's very true. Not to mention, we have another variable to throw into that mix, which of course is the labor shortage, which is, again, no shock. You've been here 18 years,
Mhm.
I've been only here 11, and we've been reporting on it since. But, it's more acute now as it's upon us. So the budget, I think, has tried to hint, or excuse me, the federal budget articles that we've seen have hinted at some potential avenues to address that, be it, apprenticeship training or funding um, coming down and credential recognition, um, across Canada for
Mhm.
certain trades. So again, all of that's to say that may help the issue, but I think it's one thing to announce these major endeavors, and it's another thing to fully execute them. And that I think goes along with the nation building projects that were announced. A lot of those are already underway, which is
Mhm.
good, obviously. But, to get things built in this country, you need people to build it. So we have some significant challenges ahead of us.
Well, I know. I guess we're in the process of dating ourselves, which is scary enough for me on my end. But my first ever story at the DCN, not that this is, Vince story time on this podcast, but my first ever story at the DCN 19 years ago was with George Graciotis, then of the Construction Sector Council, and the looming labor shortage in Canada and how many people needed to come in. That's 19 years ago. We're talking about, hundreds of thousands of people that needed to come into the industry because of the baby boomers retiring, because of the older guard moving on. And now we're in an interesting spot, aren't we? Because some of the older guard are holding on, not moving on, right? Because there's still about that institutional knowledge some companies and firms are finding is very important. Training of younger replacements that comes with its challenges, whether
Hmm.
it's completing apprenticeships or whether it's people that do get on the professional management side, but really don't cut their teeth enough yet on site in real time
Right.
to be able to fill in gaps and spaces. This is a problem we're seeing in the U.S. and in Canada. This is a constant fear that keeps contractors and firms up at night on both sides of the border. Do we have the bodies to do this work? So, to your point on the nation building stuff, which is something I don't think it's keeping people up at night, but we're curious to see if there's going to be funding in the federal budget around that. What else are they looking at as far as what needs to get built? Because our prime minister said, build, baby, build, right? Yeah, I think that was one of his first
Hmm.
catchphrases that came out, one of his first press conferences. But that comes with something. You need the bodies to do it. So maybe that first step around the foreign credential recognition is a big deal. Curious to see what the temporary foreign worker program
Mm. Yes,
was, something we've been familiar with for a very long time, and it's had its slings and arrows of light thrown at it as well.
it has. Will it
Where
get completely scrapped? Will it get named something else? Will it be completely revamped and modified and improved? Who knows?
the Red Seal recognition.
Yes. So,
I can think about the past stories we've talked about. Industry still talk about it, reducing those interprovincial trade barriers. Provincial premiers at the outset of this year, when the tariff talks and attacks started to happen, got together, as talking heads and really tried to reduce those barriers. And we saw some credentialed professions have some of those barriers
yes.
reduced.
Yep.
Is that enough? You know, plenty, plenty to keep this industry up at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Uh, you
it's
know,
true.
it is, and stay tuned. We're on top of it all. As always, through the Journal of Commerce and the Daily Commercial News. Visit us at www.dcnonl.com or www.joconl.com, to stay up to date. Subscribe to our newsletters. This podcast is going to start coming back with a bit more of a regular cadence right now. So that's kind of exciting. Probably doing more specials than we do like some of our regular reporting, because that's some of the feedback we're getting, right? People do like when we take some deeper dives and have some specialized episodes. So we'll go about it that way. With that, Lindsay, are you dressing up for Halloween?
Am I? Yes, I am dressing up for Halloween.
Are you?
I am.
Seriously? I didn't know that. I thought you weren't.
No, I seriously am.
Okay.
I take this what you will,
Okay.
listeners and Vince,
Hmm.
but I am being the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz. Now, that is because my daughter is being Dorothy, and so it has become a family affair.
Hmm.
My entire immediate family will be the Wizard of Oz, with my husband being the Scarecrow, me the Wicked Witch, my daughter Dorothy, my mother-in-law the Lion,
Oh my God.
and my and her partner the Tin Man, and my dad the Wizard.
Truly a
So,
family affair. I love it. You guys
uh,
rock.
now,
You guys
Vince,
are.
are you dressing up?
I'm dressing up as, yeah, middle-aged director of news media at ConstructConnect,
An
who's going to
old
be
curmudgeon.
the old curmudgeon. Yeah, I'm putting on my curmudgeon face as I take
Ah,
the boys out to trick or treat. Rain or not, it's not going to stop us here. So,
no, there is no stopping these children.
no,
I
not
don't
at
blame
all.
them.
Yeah. But with that, just as a reminder to all listeners, if you're hearing this during the day before you go out at night, these used to be the messages we used to hear growing up as kids, right? Be careful driving around. Lots of little ones, moving about excited. So be safe. Look out for each other out there while you're out there as well, with kids. And just remember to have a lot of fun. It's one of those nights where we can just totally let loose. So, and just escape a little bit. Can't wait to watch the scary movie that'll be in order for later in the evening after trick or treating is done. We normally do that as a tradition here. So just got to narrow it down to which one we want to get spooked by, if that's possible. So with that, thank you so much, listeners, and have a happy Halloween. Thank you, Lindsay.
Happy Halloween. Thanks, guys.